We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. Just want to let the rest of our attendees in. Thank you. We'll start in just a moment. We're going to let a few more attendees into the session. We'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2025 May feature of our National University Speaker Series. My name is Dr. Nancy Rowan Heinrich, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Vice President of Community Engagement for National University. I also serve as the Executive Director of the National University Foundation. I'm proud to be the founder and host of our speaker series. And over the last 5 years, we've held more than 50 different episodes with an amazing group of speakers and very interesting variety of topics. So today, I know that we are joined by students, alumni, faculty, staff, and community members, and just always want to share that everyone is welcome to the National University Speaker Series. The past sessions and today's session will be recorded and they are posted on the alumni website. So you are welcome to view any of those past sessions. I just want to share a little bit about National University. We were founded in 1971 by a retired U.S. Navy captain, Dr. David Chagos. And we have a very rich history of providing accessible and relevant higher ed opportunities to meet the needs of non-traditional working and military students. Today, more than 50% of our undergraduate students are military affiliated. Currently, NU serves more than 50,000 active academic students, 80,000 non-academic students, and we have an alumni base that is up to 246,000. Today's subject is obviously very interesting to all of you, and we're very fascinated to find out more about supercharging your productivity with AI. Today's dynamic speaker is Dr. Nikki Fitch-Collins, who is a very accomplished leadership and professional development facilitator at Learnit. I'm pleased to share that Nikki has earned her PhD in education from North Central University, part of National University, a master's from Minnesota State University, Mankato, and a BS degree in psychology and sociology from the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. I've been there. Professionally, Nikki has combined her extensive experience in higher education at more than 5 different universities with her skill set in training and development, project management, strategic management, and public speaking to facilitate impactful training to executives, managers, and emerging leaders. So we look forward to hearing more from Nikki on this topic on how to supercharge your productivity through AI. I wanted to share with you that feel free to enter any questions in the Q&A. We will have a moderated Q&A following today's presentation. And I'm pleased to share that today's moderator is Dr. Brian Arnold, who is the Director of Credential-Rich Pathways at National University. He's also a very seasoned faculty member with expertise in education technology, fine arts, and he is quite experienced in the field of AI as well. So it should be a wonderful dialogue. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Nikki as we hear more about supercharging your productivity through AI. Nikki?
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. I so appreciate that introduction, and want to just go ahead and say good morning, good afternoon, evening, overnight. We have folks coming in from all over the place today, and I'm so excited to be here and spend some time here. We have 165 people in the room right now, which I'm really excited for. And we're going to be talking about something that I know all of us want, right? This idea of supercharging our productivity with AI. What we're going to be talking about today is all about curiosity and experimentation, checking things out, making AI your productivity assistant, okay? And so what I'd like for everybody to do is I want you to go ahead, get those fingers ready, open up that chat. We already have so many folks coming in there. And I want you to go ahead and take a look at your to-do list. Think about your to-do list. And I want you to pepper into the chat there, right into the chat. What are some things that you're hoping AI can help you with? So just go ahead, let's fill up that chat there, get a real flurry of activity in there. The goal is by the end of this webinar, hopefully we're going to be able to use AI to help us complete some of those tasks more productively, okay? For us to be able to meet those needs and again, to use AI as our productivity assistant. We got all sorts of stuff. I have that chat over on the right-hand side, so I'm seeing all sorts of stuff coming in there. This is about enhancing our productivity on the individual level. I'm not talking about how do you completely change your organization, tip to tail or anything like this. I'm talking about making it your productivity assistant. So let me tell you, I'm going to be sharing with you for about the next half an hour or so, a few different items. And as Nancy said before, this is my jam as part of what I do at Learn It as a human skills facilitator. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be exploring. The first thing that we're going to start with is how do we automate and how do we streamline some tasks in our work world? Really about streamlining and making us more productive. I think that's the thing for a lot of folks that's really, really exciting to them about AI. We're also going to take a look at how do we research and how can we use AI to analyze and summarize information, again, serving this idea of making AI or helping AI make us more productive. And then the final thing, this is pretty fun, we're going to talk about how do we personalize our workflows to really enhance our productivity in other areas of our life. So it's not just a work tool, but it's actually something great that we can use personally, okay? Some quick housekeeping pieces that I want to encourage everybody. Number one is please do engage in that chat. I'm going to be trying to glance at that as much as possible. I know Brian's going to be taking a look at things as well. Please take care of you. The other thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and into the chat, I'm going to upload a workbook for everybody. I definitely want to make sure that everybody grabs a hold of that workbook, that you can download that you can save it, you can follow along. There's all sorts of good stuff in there so that you can take notes directly there. I encourage everybody to come with a growth mindset. We are all coming to this topic of AI with either no knowledge, and today's the first thing, or we have extensive knowledge, but there's something that every single one of us can learn, okay? I also encourage you to think about when you're thinking about using AI in your work world, make sure that you know your AI policy and use standards in your organization. And I would encourage you, if you want to, is go ahead and log into an AI tool and think about tinkering as we're going along with all of this, okay? And so what I want to do is I want us to start with this idea, the big mindset, okay? The big mindset I want you to adopt through this webinar is that I want you to make AI your productivity assistant, okay? The possibilities are endless here, but essentially what I want you to do is if I can get you to walk away with one question and one question only when you think about this webinar is, how can AI help me with this? If you can ask yourself that over and over and over again, morning, noon, and night, how can AI help me with this? Then what you're doing is you're teaching yourself to make AI your productivity assistant. Using a variety of different tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Meta, all of these different sort of things that we have going on, right? You will be able to take a look at what are you going to do in terms of automating and, analyzing and personalizing what you have going on. All of these different pieces are going to enable you to be able to focus on the more strategic stuff, the stuff that I don't know about you all, but I have some of those things that are sitting on my to-do list that I'm like, well, not so much anymore, but used to be sitting on my to-do list that I'd be thinking, gosh, I really want to, I wish I had time for this. I really wish that I had more opportunities to do this. I wish that I could get more time in the day, right? And the more that we bring AI into our work worlds, the more that we're going to be able to do these things. And so these are the three pieces that we're going to focus on here today. Okay. What does this look like for us as we are continuing to grow and develop in our use of AI? Okay. We're going to be spending the bulk of our time taking a look at those first two, automating and analyzing. That personalized section, that's a lot of fun. We're just going to have a good time with that. Okay. So let's jump right into things. Okay. When we start with this idea of automation, okay, automation isn't necessarily about how do I make everything automatic in my life, okay? We want to start first with looking at things. Again, what we're talking about here is things at the individual level, okay? And there's 4 different steps that we can essentially use to be able to better engage with our work worlds and better engage with AI, okay? And the 4 steps that I want you to think about when it comes to automating my workflow, okay, and you're going to see these show up, by the way, in the bottom of page 2 of that workbook there, is first we need to identify what are those repetitive, those routine sort of tasks. Those could be things like summarizing weekly reports that you get from other colleagues, optimizing your calendar. We're going to go through a couple of those pieces. Summarizing large emails or reports, creating social media posts, analyzing customer feedback. Really, the opportunities are endless, but identifying what you want to automate. And then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and assess the benefits and the feasibility of automating those tasks, okay? That's really important because we don't want to just use AI to automate stuff just because we can. We want to make sure that it's a positive value add to it. So some of those benefits might be like speeding up processes, speeding up your ability to respond to customers and clients. It could be reducing the risk or human error. It could be reducing costs, whatever that might look like. We also want to think about feasibility. What apps does your organization already have that maybe have some AI components to it that you could use? Have you integrated some of those things? Do you know what you have access to personally or professionally? I know a lot of our devices these days, when we get into buying a new phone or something like that, oh, guess what? You're going to get unlimited usage of this new AI tool or whatever that might look like, right? And then what we want to do is we want to prioritize looking at what are those tasks that we want to automate. Which one of those things is going to be the biggest bang for your buck, right? Which one of those tasks is going to have the most impact on your goals and your priorities? Thus, we want to bring that to the top of the priority list of things that we want to automate. And then what we want to do is we want to determine what AI tool do we want to use and start setting up the workflow, okay? So let's chat about this. And I want you to get those fingers ready. If you go back to that original question I asked, what are some of those things on that to-do list that are repetitive or routine? What I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and drop a few words into the chat. What looks like it's beneficial and feasible to you to do? And I want to go ahead and do that because sometimes it's really helpful for us. Please go ahead and pop some things in the chat there. It's really helpful for us sometimes to see what other people have to say of like, oh yeah, this is going to be high benefit and this is highly feasible for me to do this, right? So we have calendaring, research, we have social media coming in, lots of different things, calendaring, meetings, sending emails, writing treatment plans, all sorts of stuff. Absolutely. We want to talk about high benefit and ease of use or feasibility, okay? Now, there's a lot of different tasks that many of us, if you're struggling like, well, Nikki, I don't even know, a lot of different things that we can take a look at doing. These are but just a few, right? And you're going to see this list on the top of page 4, right? These are just 12 different things that we could take a look at here. I will tell you, I probably do half to 3/4 of these things on a regular basis. And you might be thinking, okay, well, this sounds really good, Nikki, but how, right? What we need to focus on is how do we choose the right tool for the task. Now, I want to be very clear. I do not have a commercial relationship with any of these companies or any of these programs. There are a lot of options out there. But when we think about, again, we start first at the top of the funnel, those 4 questions. And then what we do is we figure out which one of these is going to be beneficial and which one of these is going to be feasible. And then we have to start investigating what are those options, right? If you're thinking about things like calendars, right? Maybe you want to look at Calendly. I use this all the time with my work at Learn It. If you're thinking about, a lot of us sit in in meetings all the time, right? The research out there says we spend anywhere from 12 to 18 hours or more of our work week just in meetings. And so maybe we want to have some automated meeting transcription tools, whatever that might be, right? These tools that are available to us, and again, these are but just a few, there are literally thousands of tools that are out there that are in existence, and there are more coming out over time. But you need to investigate, what do I already have access to, and what exactly is the solution that I'm looking for, okay? So I want to get into an example of some level of automation for AI, okay? And when I think about this, I love to use ChatGPT, partially because it was the first one in the game back in November 2022, which seems like ancient history at this point, but also because it's the one within my organization at Learn It we use, as we have some internally facing GPTs that we use all the time. And so what I want to do is I want us to talk first about this idea of creating usable prompts, okay? Creating reusable prompts is essentially taking things and tailoring them to our work, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to focus in, I'm going to show you a little bit about how we schedule, how we can play around with our schedules a little bit and use ChatGPT to help us kind of better streamline and find more productivity with our calendars. And then we're also going to talk about something called multi-step workflow prompting, which is essentially a fancy terminology for breaking the big stuff down into little things, okay? So let's start first with that, creating a reusable prompt. This is awesome for any of you, as I'm looking at that chat over there, any of these things that you're like, holy cow, I do this very regularly. I do this all the time, and I don't want to recreate the wheel every single time. And so the 3 steps that you want to take to do this, you're going to find this on bottom of page 3 or page 5, pardon me, of that workbook. The first thing is to develop that initial prompt for the task. A prompt is essentially you starting the conversation with that generative AI tool. I'm going to show you an example of one in a moment here. Then what I suggest that you do is you create an AI prompt library. I personally use Microsoft OneNote all the time at work, and I create a notebook for all of my different categorizations of different prompts, and I take those once they're highly refined, I save them in there, and you know what? Pay it forward. If you have some good prompts that are really helpful for you, think about sharing them with your colleagues. Think about sharing them with other people within your organization. Or if you're doing some things personally, I will tell you, I share my prompt for meal planning with all sorts of people all the time, right? If you're interested in that, we can connect later. But this is what these things look like, right? Is to create that reusable prompt, iterate on it a little bit, save it, and then share it. So let me share an example with you, okay? Now, this is going to be a big task. This is a big example. You're going to see this on page 6. But say at work, somebody in your organization, say that finance team emails you a PDF with a list of a whole bunch of invoices that need to be processed, okay? We need to essentially streamline and extract all of that different invoice data, and we want to put it into a spreadsheet. We want to be able to bring that into our accounting software. So here is the big old prompt that I would use. And now don't get overwhelmed, okay? That is a huge prompt. But essentially what I'm doing in a matter of seconds is I'm telling that generative AI tool to please go ahead and extract all of that information into a CSV file, create files, create headers, take a look at the dates, the invoice numbers, the amounts, all of this sort of stuff, put it in alphanumeric order. You can read through that big gigantic prompt that's in there. But the point of this is that every single week I am getting a whole bunch of data in a PDF form. That's not helpful to me. I need to have that in a CSV file. I need to be able to load that into my accounting software. And so in a matter of moments, your AI tool is going to be able to take and do that task that otherwise would take you minutes, if not hours, okay? Now, the thing about this is that you can automate this if you have the capacity and capability within your organization to use different email monitoring tools, some data extraction tools. There's email monitoring that's in both Outlook as well as Gmail. Some organizations have this enabled. Some individual accounts, you can enable this. There's PDF extraction tools you can use all of this sort of stuff. But essentially, something like this, I end up with a downloadable CSV file like that, okay? And that's what's magic about this. Something that would have otherwise taken me minutes or hours. And by following and using this reusable prompt, say every Monday morning, oh, that finance team, they send me this thing. Within a matter of moments, I have exactly the data that I need in the format in which I need, right? Pretty incredible. Now, maybe you're thinking about your work schedule and you're thinking, holy cow, I need to better kind of set myself up for greater level of success in terms of what my schedule looks like. Okay. And so what I'm going to ask the AI tool is essentially I want to tell it a little bit about who I am and what I need, because you know what? The calendar, my week to week setup, it's a mess. I'm super stressed. I don't feel like I'm focusing on the right things. My calendar is a disaster, right? And so prompting with a personal task like this is my favorite place to start and experiment. It's helping AI help me. And so I would put a prompt in just like this one, where I would say, and you're going to find this at the top of page 7 in that workbook there, I might input a prompt that says, I am a fill in the blank, right? Needing to balance. And then you list out the different types of work or the different tasks that you have. Can you develop a comprehensive weekly schedule to enhance my productivity? And I want you to include some time blocks for focused work and meetings and breaks, all of this sort of stuff. Please provide the schedule in a table format, okay? And here's what ChatGPT in particular comes up with. Now, by the way, I know I'm saying ChatGPT, but you can use these prompts, you can use this in any tool that you want. It comes up with a pretty nice looking weekly schedule, right? And you can see our prompt shows up in that upper circle there. In this sense, I'm saying I'm an associate marketer or something like that, right? And what it is it brings me this nice little calendar, and it has, this nice way for me to look at things and say, oh, that's a better way. Yeah, calendar power, Brian says. That's a better way for me to approach things. But it's not perfect. And so what we want to do is we want to get into this idea of iterating and refining. And this is where we need to think about, what are the different variables that are at play? What are the things that are important within the context of my work? Things such as, what am I telling the AI tool, things that are high priority? Where do I have flexibility? What are my work hours? What sort of personal obligations do I have going on? When are my energy peaks and valleys? We talk about this in some of our other workshops on time management and energy management, right? And so then what we do is we go ahead and we refine that prompt a little bit here. And you'll see, right, that what I have is a completely refined prompt. And I'm telling a little bit more about my work hours and those high priority tasks and my energy peaks and valleys when I want to have, meetings and stuff like that, right? And so what it does is it produces, check this out, right? It produces a much better schedule for me. Right. And I now can take that and I can start building some of those calendar blocks in my calendar, right? Because, oh, you know what? This really does work for me. Now, this works really great if some of us are starting from ground zero in terms of having nothing on our calendar. But a different way for us to do this, and I love doing this, is taking a screenshot of an average week of your calendar, and you can paste that directly into your tool, right? And then you can prompt it with, review my calendar, make some suggestions, some adjustments for time blocking, prioritization, high value tasks, eliminating lower or delegating lower priority things, right? I love this because check it out, right? I take a look at things and be like, here's my current calendar. And then I go ahead and I put that prompt in there. And what it does is, check out this text output. I know that this is kind of tiny here, but it's going to make suggestions to you. You need some buffer times, right? We all need to refill that cup of coffee. We all need to stand up and stretch, right? I love that middle one. Consider if all meetings are essential, right? It's telling you it's time to cut back some of those meetings a little bit, right? And, it's pretty awesome, because then what I can do is I can take those suggestions and say, hey, let's rerun this a little bit. Knowing those suggestions in mind, now produce something for me, right? And this is incredibly powerful. I do this every once in a while, about every 4 to 6 weeks, take a shot of my calendar, right? And where do I have some opportunities for optimization, some improvement, right? Knowing that I'm a huge morning person, right? That is when I'm coming out of the gate with the most morning. And I will tell you, it is 5:20 my time right now. And so if you think I'm high energy now, you should see me at 8 a.m. But what we can do too is we can take a look at this with a project too. So if you think about, a lot of us are probably working on a variety of different projects in our workplace, right? And we're trying to figure out, what's the big runway? What's the big plan for this project? How do I figure out the calendar and setting up what are all of the different tasks that I have to do? And so I can ask it, create a schedule for me to do the project by this due date. Include the deliverables, timelines, contingency planning, right? We start giving it a little bit more information. and I tell it to put it in a table. And we input that, right? And check this out, right? It creates this big old schedule for you, right? And I'm just scrolling through that a little bit. But basically, what it does is it sets up week by week, all the way up to 25 weeks of the year, right? For you to be able, in a matter of seconds, say, this is what we're going to be doing at this point. This is what's going to be going on at this point. And this could be incredibly helpful because I think about some of the projects that I've run over the years, and I'm like, this in and of itself takes hours for me to set up. What am I going to be doing week by week? Or what is our project team going to be doing, right? And remember, if the first output isn't good, refine and iterate, okay? Now, what we want to do next is we want to go ahead and take a look at what's called multi-step workflow, okay? Multi-step workflow is kind of like dissecting things down into smaller pieces. So instead of writing one of those big, gigantic, long prompts, just like I had before, right, we're going to do something a little bit more basic, a little bit smaller, called chain of thought prompting. And you're going to see an example of this on the top of page 8, or some of the stuff I'm going to visualize here. Okay, chain of thought prompting, super beneficial because essentially what we're doing is we're showing our work. Okay, and so what we might start with is I'm going to put in this first prompt, right? And then I'm going to, iterate on that a little bit, and I'm going to iterate on that because I'm thinking about this. I need to add this in. I need to add this in. Essentially what it is you're taking bite-sized examples or bite-sized chunks, making it easier to chew for us rather than one big, gigantic prompt. Okay. The chain of thought prompting example I want to share with you is, say we're launching some new marketing for a new product, okay? And so what I want to do is I want to first define my target audience and figure out who's my customer, right? So I might start first with who's the ideal customer, and consider some demographics, some interests, some behaviors. Maybe I'm thinking about geographic area, and then I could prompt it around developing some campaign objectives. What are the primary goals? Am I just trying to build brand awareness? Am I trying to do some lead generation? Am I trying to target some people for sales? And then finally, what I can do in that third prompt is create a marketing strategy. Outline a comprehensive marketing strategy that includes some different channels, some message, some content ideas, and a timeline for execution. Okay. Now, I could have just entered that as one big, gigantic, large prompt, right? And, kind of iterated from there, but oof, that's a really big prompt, right? And so what we want to do is we want to think about better, like, again, this idea of taking bite-sized chunks, okay? Just as we would take kind of a bigger sort of project and break it down into smaller pieces, right? We can think of it like stages. We can think about it like levels. We can think about it like iterations and little pieces, right? And so what I can do is I can break things down one by one and have essentially a conversation with the AI tool with each one of these different prompts so that I'm further refining over time, right? This is really interesting sort of stuff because what I'm doing is, again, making it a little bit more manageable. As you see those things that I'm animating underneath, right? I'm doing just a little bit at a time. It's not this big, gigantic prompt. For some of us, that works really well. That finance example, absolutely. But for this, right, what I'm doing is just a little bit of chain of thought, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to switch gears a little bit, right? We started first with this idea of automating, and now what we're going to do is we're going to move ourselves into the analyzing and summarizing and researching piece, okay? And then after that, obviously, we're going to go into those personal pieces, okay? What I want to do is I want to introduce you to a tool called Perplexity. If you've used Perplexity, go ahead and say yes in the chat right now. Perplexity is a fantastic research assistant tool. It's great for distilling. Yes, look at all those yeses. It's a great tool for you to distill and curate different information. I always tell people anything that you can Google, you can Perplexity, right? And it's a great tool. It's a part of the Google family. And what it does is it allows you to be able to engage in specialized information retrieval. Okay. It's really powerful for research and analysis purposes. And it's really helpful too, because what we can do is we can put in a prompt just as we would anywhere else. Let me show you what this looks like. This is the context entry box here. We can put in any sort of prompt just as we would in any other instance, right? And what we can do is we can actually drill things down a little bit, right? And so what I might do is I might ask it, I want you to go ahead and give me a summary of learning and development trends from 2024 or something like that, right? And the thing that I love about this, right, is that it tells you right up top, here's where my sources are. Here's where I got this information. So that, again, we're in an academic environment. I know who I'm talking to right now. You want to validate or you want to take a look at the validity of those sources, right? Now, I'm not saying that you should blindly trust whatever comes from Perplexity. Just like any other AI tool, you need to make sure that you are fact checking if anything looks strange or odd or anything like that. But Perplexity is a fantastic way to focus in. One of the things that I love about this, for those of you that have used Perplexity, you would have seen this, is that you can choose this focus tab. And what you can do is you can essentially ask it to focus in on academic peer-reviewed journals. If you really want to focus in on just Reddit stuff, you can focus in on just Reddit, whatever makes sense for you. Access information, if you need to have more information about how to access Perplexity, you're going to find that on page 9 of that workbook, okay? So Perplexity, fantastic research assistant tool for you. Now, when we think about the rest of the tools, or thinking about not just research, but now we move to summarization. And I will tell you, this has been a total game changer for me, is thinking about AI tools that I can use to summarize a big long email from one of my coworkers, a transcript, a report, a news article, a blog, even PDFs of books that I have, right? Where I can summarize something and I can get a quick little view of what something is to know either is this something I want to dig into, or I'm looking for this particular piece. I want to know the author's point of view, whatever that might look like. And I want to give you a few different examples of what are some prompts that you might use to be able to summarize. And you're going to see these on the top of page 10, okay? You might start with is like, I want to actually have it summarize something that I'm attaching, right? You can tell it a word count. You can, the AI tools aren't great about, the specific number of words, right? I tend to say paragraphs rather than specific numbers of words. I can ask it to go ahead and ask it to translate something into another language. I can ask it to give me the point of view of the author, right? All of these different sort of things, I can ask it to take a look at something, summarize it, give me the 5 main points, and what is the author's perspective? What is their hot take? What is it that they want? What is it that they like? Okay. What is it that they're really trying to put out there? The other thing that we can do, right, is not just about research and it's not just about summarization. It's also about our ability to analyze with AI, right? When we think about our work, when we think about our personal life, there's a ton of things that we can find, right, that we can analyze. Sales data, year-over-year sales data, quarter-over-quarter data, customer feedback information, market research, website traffic, click-through rates, financial data, more and more and more, whatever makes sense in your organization, right? And there's a lot of different tools that you can use for this. Again, you can take a look and you can find the tool of your choice to kind of experiment and play with this a little bit. But when we're taking a look at analysis, again, here's some prompt examples. I like to give people lots of examples so that you know what you can kind of play with a little bit. And you're going to see these on the bottom of page 10. Okay. So I might ask it to look at something and tell me these significant trends, right? Like maybe I could say, analyze this year-over-year sales data and identify some trends that are possible for the next 2 quarters. Maybe I want to look at some themes in the data, review the following customer feedback comments and categorize them into common themes. This is incredibly helpful for me in my work. I facilitate literally hundreds and hundreds of workshops every single year, and I want to be able to get some themes in the feedback that come, right? And I can also take a look at some other prompts like key findings, right? I just used this to analyze a white paper that was on learning and development, and I wanted to know the organization's key findings. I didn't have time in just that short period of time to be able to dig in and read it, but I'm like, I want to know what the key findings are to spur my interest to come back to it. I read a couple of things and I was like, ooh, this is good. I definitely am coming back to this tomorrow, right? And I can also use it to do a little bit of back to the future sort of analysis. If you want to do a little bit of predictive analysis, right? Again, that piece about sales data, or, focus in on what are some product categories that maybe we need to look at doing some expansion on, whatever this is. Something that's really important to think about when it comes to analyzing data is this, is if you need to change the output medium, okay? You can change the output in all sorts of different ways, right? What that could look like for you is maybe you're asking it to present some information to you in table format, right? Maybe I want it to present some information to me in a spreadsheet, right? You can ask it to provide, and you're going to see this on page 11, you can ask it to provide some downloadable PDFs with that information. You could also, my particular favorite is I can ask it to give me an output in different formats, bullet points, flowcharts, decision trees. I've played around a little bit and said, create a poem on this, create some song lyrics, whatever it might be, right? Bullet points, flowcharts, tables, decision trees, dialogue scripts, poetry, song lyrics, code snippets, quizzes, step-by-step instructions, carousels for LinkedIn, whatever it might be. The big takeaway here is that you need to find the way in which you want to consume information and then work backwards from there. One other tool that I want to talk with you about is NotebookLM. If you have used NotebookLM, go ahead and write Notebook into the chat there. NotebookLM is a Google product. This is a fantastic collaborative research tool, a little bit different than some of the other tools that are out there because it allows you to essentially bring together a lot of different pieces of information, and you can do a number of different things with it. You can have it create study guides. You can have it create FAQs for you. You can have it generate text, whatever that might look like. One of the things that I love to do is frequently asked questions documents, right? And so I will pull together a number of different resources and say, create an FAQ for this, create a study guide, create a table of contents, right? You can also do audio generation. And I want to go ahead, and I'm pretty sure my audio is going to be shared here. I want to go ahead and play this for you. This is an audio podcast that's created. This is AI voices that's created for some content. I took some content from another one of our workshops and I asked it to create a little podcast on that content. And so I want to just play a few seconds of that for you.
Ever feel like, you're leading a team, but some members just aren't quite hitting the mark?
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us, right?
Right.
So today we're diving into a way to really fine tune that team performance. It's called coaching.
And it's not about, being a dictator, right?
Right.
The really
So if you heard that little example there, what you're doing is you are taking your content and you're asking it to create an audio file and audio generation from this. I will tell you, I use this when I'm driving, when I'm walking, when I travel a fair amount for work. I put together a bunch of content, I put it into NotebookLM, right? And it creates this little podcast. And Sarah says, wow, that's freaky, right? But it's kind of cool. It's a great way for any of us that are audio learners, right, to be able to bring information in together and to hear essentially two people or two voices talking about that content, okay? Now, the big thing that I want to share with you, and we're getting close to the end here, is to talk about, one of my pro tips, try to break AI, right? AI tools are not perfect, and that's one of the things that people say, oh, but there's hallucinations, there's wrong data. Do you know a human who doesn't make mistakes? I don't, right? And so part for us is to be able to try and experiment and iterate and check it out, right? Get excited by the errors. These systems are not perfect. Neither are humans, all right? So for us to expect perfection from it, right, is for us to be able to say, okay, well, maybe I need to fact check my information. Maybe I need to actually change my prompt a little bit because it's giving me the wrong information, okay? Now, the final thing that I want to do is I want you to not forget about the playful side of AI. AI isn't just to help you be more productive at work. You can help make it a little bit more personalized for you. And you're going to see some of this stuff show up on the bottom of page 12 there. You can personalize it by asking you to fix some things, helping you fix some things around the house. I have done this a ton, right? How do I fix this? What is this error code? Where's the manual for this product, right? Rather than going out and Googling something and then having to sift through all of those Google things, watch all those different YouTube videos and actually figure out what makes sense or what actually is, right? One of the things that I love to do too is to ask it to generate a weekly meal plan for me. I've also asked it to be a translator. I'm actually working to reactivate some language that was in my household as a child growing up. And so I am actually practicing with the app, with the ChatGPT app, that I will ask it to produce this sentence in this other language. I will say it, and then I ask it to slow it down by 50%, slow it down. And I ask for feedback on my pronunciations, just as you would with any sort of real live person, right? One of the other things for any of you that are walking on a treadmill, maybe you're traveling a lot, you find yourself in the car, you can use those apps to be able to have a conversation, right? I did this recently when I was walking through an airport. From the point that I walked through security to where when I got to my gate, I had gone back and forth with different prompts and different conversation that I was having with the AI tool, that by the time I got to my gate, I opened up my laptop. I had exactly what I needed to do. I basically just need to do some slight little polish on the formatting and some review of that, and I had exactly what I needed for the task at hand, right? All while I was walking. The final thing is kind of thinking about what are some of those other things that are on your to-do list. Like I said, creating recipes, meal plans, asking for a workout plan. I had a good friend of mine that said, I put in some stuff that I was having some challenges with, some physical needs and what's going on. Can you create a workout plan that's going to create low stress on this part of my body and all this sort of stuff, right? And so the point of this, as we're starting to wrap up here, is to coach AI with feedback. You'll notice I use the term conversation a few times, right? I think about conversing with an AI tool like you would another human being. And part of conversing with another human being is that you're giving it some feedback, right? That was really helpful. Can you tell me how to do that? This was great. Can you make it funnier? Can you make this longer? Can you cut it in half? Can you give me some more technical details? Can you find a video on this? Can you add some more information to this, whatever it is, right? The thing that's most important about all of this is that you just need to keep iterating. It's just like in Finding Nemo, right? Just keep swimming, okay? So let's summarize our journey as we're closing things up. We're going to get into some Q&A here. We talked about automating, we talked about analyzing, we talked about personalizing that journey. We talked about what are some of those things that we can do to streamline our workflows. We talked about research, summarization, and analysis, and then some of the stuff on the fun side for us to be able to have a little bit of a good time with things, okay? And so before we get into that Q&A, what I'd like you to do is I want you to go ahead and open up that chat there. What is your big takeaway from this webinar here? What is the one thing that you're going to do based on what you learned today? Go ahead and drop that into the chat, right? What is that one thing that you are going to try out to help you boost your productivity, right? Go ahead and drop that into the chat. Keep playing. There it is. Coach, use the voice. Podcast, the podcast, LM. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great one. And here's the final thing before we move into that Q&A is with the action I want you to take within the next day, if not sooner, right? Go ahead and leverage an AI tool of your choice to do something professional and do something personal that's on your to-do list. Now, before we move over into that Q&A, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Please don't leave yet. Stick around for that Q&A. I actually have a gift for you at the end of things. And so please don't sign off yet. Brian, let's go ahead. I know that there's been a lot of questions. There's been a lot of flurry of activity in the chat there. So let's go ahead and jump into some of that stuff. I'll take my slides down here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that overview. This has been phenomenal. The themes I'm hearing from your side and from the questions, as a tool for offloading cognition, for sifting through the noise for signal, it's just incomparable. And your call to just put your hands on the keyboard, grab the mouse and just play with it, I think is invaluable. So there were some themes that popped up in the questions. One of them that came up, and it was sort of a security overall question, but I think more specifically, as people are using these tools to enhance their productivity, how do they do it in a way that's safe and is a way that they protect their own data and understand how to protect their own data?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Brian. And I think the biggest thing is if you're using it for work, if you're using it personally, the guidance that I share with people is if you wouldn't rent a billboard on the side of the highway, or if you wouldn't create a website and put it all out there, or go onto Reddit and drop your secret sauce of whatever it is that you're doing, don't just put it into a generative AI tool, right? That's kind of that's the layman's terms. Is we want to make sure, right, when we're talking about this, it's training data, meaning everything that you put in becomes part of the output for everybody else. And so what we don't want to put in there is, here's the list of all of our clients, and here's their employee identification numbers, and here's all this sort of stuff, right? We need to use our research tactics, right? Code all of those sort of things, take that client information out. That's why one of the things I mentioned too, Brian, at the beginning was you need to know what your organization's AI usage policy is when we're thinking about professionally. And personally, we need to think about what level of detail do or don't we want to have out there. Obviously, there's no way in today's day and age to not be on the web, on the web somewhere. but we do want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves in the ways that make sense. And so I always tell people, if you wouldn't put it on a billboard on the side of the highway, you probably don't want to put that secret sauce into a generative AI tool.
Excellent advice. I really appreciate that. Along the similar theme of, it's sort of this overwhelming process. So how should the viewers here start to eat this elephant? How do they decide which tools to use? By what criteria other than, oh, this one's Google and I like Google, but what's a little more nuanced approach?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing, again, I'm separating out personal and professional, right? Because there's use cases in both aspects of our life. I think in the professional context, ask around and see what your organization already has access to, right? Reach out to whether it's folks in HR or IT and see, like, are there things that we already have that maybe I didn't know that I have access to? If you're a Microsoft organization, you may have access to the Copilot, aspect. If you have Google, you may have access to everything Gemini out there. And so go ahead and kind of figure out what that looks like for you professionally. And you can also, right, if you don't have any use case or limitations or anything like that, you can also go ahead and go out and say, like, here's the use case that I have. I think that we could do this for that. Can we go ahead and invest in this? Or, all of these different AI tools, they all have free places to start before you get into those paid elements and those enterprise elements. The biggest thing that I tell people to do is you just got to get out there and play, right? Think about being a kid and being out on a playground is just kind of get out there. In your personal life, you have to think about what are those problems that continue to come up or those issues that need solving, and how can you earn some big wins. I will tell you the very first use case that I had of AI that I ever used was I was at my father-in-law's house and I forgot some bedtime books for my little kids, right? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this ChatGPT thing. This was before there was app and everything. And I went in there and I put some prompts about a story. I put my daughter's name in there, and then boom, here was this story, right? And so I was able to go ahead and do that. And of course, my daughter thought it was amazing, right? And so I've used it a bunch since then. And so I think the biggest thing, Brian, is like, just go ahead and jump out there. You do not, and there is no possible way, you do not need to spend hours and hours and days getting all the training, right? Because the reality is everything's going to change in a couple of weeks anyway, right? The work of AI and generative AI is constantly shifting. So just get in there. If people are waiting to, I just want to wait and see if I can learn everything before I use it, you're never going to get there.
Excellent advice, and very realistic. I appreciate that. But let's build on that theme a little bit. I think people are feeling like, the future is now. But what does it mean? Some of us are using these tools for productivity, some of us aren't. What does that mean for our work culture, and what does it predict for you in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say, like, here's my crystal ball, Brian, and here's what I'm seeing, right? But a couple of things that I would say is if you are not using AI in your professional context, okay, the time to do so is now or yesterday. Okay. We're kind of getting to this place now. We have 2.5 solid years already that generative AI tools have been available. And I think a lot of folks are like, oh, that's not for me. That feels like cheating. It feels like something I shouldn't tell people that I'm doing. And there's this mysticism or this kind of mystic idea out there of like, oh, well, if they talk about all the time, if you don't replace or if you don't learn AI, the person who does know AI is going to replace you. And that in some regards is going to be accurate, because what it does is when we use AI, it frees our mental space, it frees our task space up to be able to be doing the bigger stuff, making those better decisions, solving bigger problems, whatever that might look like. And so I think the future of our work world is where AI is integrated into a lot, if not most of what we do, right? Some of our professions, we're going to see this, and we already are seeing this. My world of learning and development, we're seeing a lot of usage of AI in terms of coaching, in terms of content development, all sorts of just really fantastic things. But we're going to see it across all sorts of different genres and different professions. And it really concerns me when people are like, oh, that's not me. That's not my jam. Because I will tell you, if you have even just 5 years left in your working career, it will affect you, right? So if people are, I just heard a family member the other day say, I don't need to learn that. I'm retiring in about 10 years. This isn't gonna, and I was like, oh, no. This is absolutely going to affect your work, right? And so we got to get out there. We got to start playing and do so in a way that, feels some sense of comfort or challenge +1, right? And so if that's start by making a story for your kids or using it for meal planning and then saying, oh, what might this look like for my work, right? It kind of takes some of that challenge away.
I love that call to action because for good or bad, AI is going to be a part of our future. And if our job is to prepare people for that future, we have to lean into it. So we've talked about sort of the folks who are dragging their heels a little bit. They're a little concerned, overwhelmed. They have some legitimate uh, feelings about this. What about folks who are on the other end? They're like, why aren't we living in the future even more? Why aren't we rubbing AI on everything and turning everything? What advice would you have for those folks who are trying to advocate for it at their own institutions and trying to move things forward, and not everyone's on the same page?
Yeah, yeah. And Brian, I think every organization is in that place, right? And what we're really talking about is change management, right? If you think about any change that your organization has experienced, a new software, a new product, a change in leadership, whatever, all of that is around change management. And the change cycle is you have those people, those early adopters, they are like running for the finish line. They can't wait to be there, all the way back to the people that we're having to kind of drag and push across the finish line, right? What I would tell people is when it comes to advocating for the usage of AI in your work worlds is that you need to be able to talk about and share use cases. A perfect example of this is, again, as we talked about today, is what are some of those things on your to-do list that if I could do this faster, then I would be able to do this other bigger thing? What are those things that you keep moving from last week to this week and this week to next week that if I had more time, right? Those things where we hear ourselves saying that, those are use cases. And what we need to do is we need to start talking with our colleagues. We need to start talking with supervisors. For those of us that are in positions of power and influence and authority, to be able to talk with others and say, how do we take away some of this stuff that we don't need to be spending this volume of time on to be able to lift ourselves up? None of our organizations are going to be able, at the individual level, the team level, or the organization level, we cannot get bigger, faster, better, stronger without something changing, right? We can't pick up the couch cushion and find more time, right? We can't, make the economy magically better overnight. And so we don't have to do these other things. But what we can do is we can be smarter about that. And the first way that we do that is we bring AI from the shadows into the spotlight and say, how can we use this? What are the 3 or 4 different little things? Let's do a little test pilot project and see what that looks like. And how do we expand that out?
Love that. By the way, my couch cushion mostly steals my time. I don't tend to find more there, but I love
Bingo.
the analogy. So let's address a specific concern that might come up. What is the business term opportunity cost, right? So if you have $1, you can spend on this, you can't spend it on that. But well, now that we have calculators, our ability to do math in our head is going to go away. With all of these productivity and efficiency tools, GPS came around about 10 years ago, and now I can't find a building I've been to 10 times without that computer. So there's sort of a trade-off. When you speak to people's concerns in that domain, how do you balance that particular equation?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no real easy answer to that one, Brian. I mean, other than the recognition that, and you gave a couple of great examples, right? This is an iteration of our world, right? Like this is the next iteration. People were incredibly resistant to, the internet in homes, right? I'm old enough to remember when we first got the internet, when we had a computer in our house, right? And then, oh my gosh, cloud-based stuff and, all of these different tools, there was always resistance along the way. And people were saying like, well, people aren't going to know, I hear people all the time, kids don't know how to write in cursive. I will tell you right now, my 9-year-old niece, she writes in better cursive than any of the adults I know, right? So I think part of it is it's a trade-off, absolutely. Are there things that some of us in this room, there's 170 some folks that are in this room right now, are there some things that maybe our parents or our grandparents knew that we don't know? Absolutely. I never learned shorthand. Is there a need for me to know shorthand? Not really, right? I don't know that would like that. There's not a need for that. Do I need to be able to know how to do some of these other things? Not really. Can I focus my attention on other more complex things? I would argue, and a lot of scholars would argue, we are in the most complex of times right now. So why wouldn't we want to take some of that lower level stuff and make it easier, make it faster, automate it, right? Automation has been around for hundreds of years. When some of the things we look at, the first level of automation, right? How we move water, right? That sort of stuff is hundreds of years old, right? why wouldn't we look at something and say, let's make this easier for ourselves? Do I need to know how to do this from the ground up? Probably not anymore, right? Can I use this so that my company, my organization, myself, I can solve bigger problems, I can do things faster, I can be more engaged with my family, I can be more focused on the things that I'm learning? Absolutely.
Love that. There's a movie like from 1981, 1982 called Strange Brew. It's that Canadian comedy about drinking beer. And there's a scene in it where they're at the beer factory and the guy says, "Welcome to the age of automation and unemployment." And this fear of technological unemployment was there and loud 40 some years ago. So these are themes, like they just keep coming up in different forms. So I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit because it's bringing out some great stuff from you. So I hope you're okay with it. So one of the concerns is, I've got this virtual assistant, this virtual tutor, this virtual psychologist. I'm not talking to people as much anymore. So what are some of the ways that we can use some of these productivity tools? Like you said, we've freed up our time. How are we spending it? How can we use these tools to enhance our ability to interact with other humans?
Yeah, I mean, the combination I always tell with people is like as we're learning AI, our job is to learn the tech and also learn the touch. And what I mean by tech and touch is using AI for insights, for productivity, for understanding pieces of information, synthesizing things, learn that tech. But at the same time, we need to also be building our skills in the touch. And what I mean by touch is leaning into building our skills around empathy, emotional intelligence, right? If you look at every major study that's done out there about like what are the biggest skills that people need to have in the workplace today to be successful, emotional intelligence shows up in the top 5, if not the top 3, in almost every single study, right? And there's this reflexive nature of things. As we've gotten more focus on tech, have we gotten out of touch? And what I tell people all the time, what I do for work is I literally teach people how to be better at their jobs. Yes, do I facilitate AI workshops? Yeah, absolutely. But most of the rest of the time, what I do is I talk with people about work styles, about conflict management, about emotional intelligence, about customer service, about negotiation, all of these things, the human skills that we need to continue to grow and develop. And I think about it a lot like curiosity, right? We can be curious about what does the data tell me? What's the trend? What's the output? What is the summary of this piece? What's the NotebookLM little podcast on this, right? But it's not just about the data, it's about the curiosity of why does that mean that? Why are you telling me this, right? We have to respond with a level of presence, right? And take that information and learn how to ask really good questions with it. Slow down, understand more, right? So it's both about tech and touch, right? It's not just, I do what I can to just overly, automate everything in my life. When I think about things, I automate things in, a ton of things in my home because I don't want to have to think about doing those sort of things, right? And I am sure I'm not the only one. I don't want to have to tell my coffee pot to go in the morning. Be ready for me when I get up, right? Make my coffee automatically, right? I don't want to tell my lights when to go on. I want them to go on automatically, right? I want to be focused on my kids first thing in the morning, right? And those are basic, simple sort of examples, but we can't over tech without learning more with touch, right? Making sure that we are still, the human will never be replaced by AI, right? There are unique pieces about a human being, empathy, emotions, reasoning, logic, right? We can't necessarily replicate that. Can we have deep conversations, coaching sessions? Absolutely. But that doesn't replace the connection with another human being.
Love everything about that. And now I want coffee. But so I think we have time for one last question. So let's assume for a moment that we have a common agreement that this is a tool, right? And it's a frying pan. You could feed a family of 4. You could hit someone over the head with it. It's neutral. So what does good application of this tool look like when someone sees it being used? Like, that's a good use of AI versus telemarketing or some other thing that people might not like so much.
Sorry to any telemarketers in the room, right? So I think the biggest thing that I would say is each individual person in the room, you have to have a definition of success of what that looks like for you. Is it about freeing up your time? Then anything that's going to help you go faster is going to be considered a success, which means it's going like that is going to be a good use. If it's about digesting and synthesizing information and you can use an AI tool to do that, then that's going to look like success, right? So I think for each one of these things, right, is we have to figure out what are we hoping to gain, just as we would thinking about going out and having a coffee with a friend. There's coffee again, right? What am I hoping to gain? Gosh, I haven't seen this friend in a long time. I hope that we can talk about X. I hope that we can reconnect about this. That's going to be my definition of success. I think for many of us, the reason why we landed on this topic of productivity, I don't know a single person out there that's saying, gosh, I wish I was less productive, right? I wish I could do less, right? I think we all have to have an individual definition of success for each one of us.
Awesome. Well, I'm not running the show, but it looks like we're coming up on time. Is there any final wisdom that you want to share with folks? And then I think Nancy has a few words.
I do. Yeah, I would actually like to go ahead. I want to reshare my slides really quick here. And I'm going to drop a few links into the chat for everybody that's still hanging out here. The first that's coming through there is an evaluation link. I please welcome you. Please take that out. That's just going to take a few minutes of your time. If you could give me some feedback, what did you like? What did you not like? What can I do to be helpful to you? Please go ahead and fill that out. The other thing that I would like to do is I want to go ahead and give everyone the opportunity, learn it as an organization. We'd love for you to get connected to us. We have a great YouTube channel. We have a fantastic podcast. And the very last link that's coming through there is my LinkedIn. I would welcome, please go ahead and hit that connect button. Find me. That's a great way for us to keep in touch. The final thing I mentioned to you, there is a $250 gift that I wanted to offer to everybody. And that is that you can go to learnit.com. If you use that code NU LearnIt AI, or you scan that QR code that's there, you can go ahead and register for any one of our workshops. We have a suite of other AI workshops. We have a whole bunch of other topics. I would welcome you to go ahead. Please use that code. That's my gift to our community to be able to continue that learning and that growth and development. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here today. And Nancy, I'm going to go ahead and pass things back over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki. That was just amazing. And I know based on the number of people who have stayed throughout the webinar that people were very interested in this topic. It's so generous of LearnIt and you to offer additional professional development in this area, because I think we have a lot of eager listeners. Brian, thank you so much for moderating. Very appreciative of that. And Heather and Lindsay, thanks so much for getting our speaker series up and running every month. And we have just a few announcements on some dates coming up, but please join us again for future NU speaker series. For those of you who are alumni, we have an association meeting coming up this Thursday. For those in San Diego, we do have a networking event tomorrow night. Next week is our commencement. First time we're doing it at Front Wave Arena in Oceanside. We'll have nearly 3,000 graduates that are crossing the stage. So we're excited about that. At our Scripps location, we do offer career transition seminars hosted by Trevor Blair at Blair Search Partners. Saw him earlier today. Those are great workshops for people that are looking for new positions or to move up in their field. Really awesome opportunity is our Navigator networking. Navi, the Navigator, as you know, is the NU mascot, but networking opportunities and getting to know people is, just really helpful and growing in your current career. And then very excited on May 28th to be able to hold a special session for recent graduates in looking at commencement to career and mentoring beyond graduation. So lots of exciting events. Our newsletter will be coming out in about, let's say, a week and a half, right after commencement. Always check that out. Lots of dates and exciting updates are available on that. So again, thank you so much, Nikki, Brian, Heather, Lindsay, and thanks to all the participants for listening. Appreciate you.